maybe just getting to 10 degrees in the far southwest. That's 50 Fahrenheit, but with a breeze, it will feel cooler. And then the fog becomes more widespread again on Saturday night. We could see some fog getting into parts of Wales, southwest England as well. So for some places, grey and gloomy remains the picture for the next couple of days. Some clearer skies, again, leads to a frost across parts of Scotland, maybe northern England, perhaps parts of Wales as well, although cloud amounts will come and go through the night. Then as we go into Sunday, that fog could again persist across some parts of the country, especially through the Midlands and northern England. That's where we could see it lasting all day. Where it does, temperatures will stay close to freezing, but away from that, it'll be just that little bit colder. As we go into
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else, I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Hey, welcome along on tonight's Mark Steyn Show. As North Shropshire goes, so goes the nation. We're going to let Sir John Redwood answer that one. We have fictional spies and real-world spy masters. Rick Grenell, former US Director of National Intelligence, will give away all America's deep state secrets in one massive store-wide clearance. If you thought No Time to Die was a great plonking snoozeroo that makes Octopussy look like Citizen Kane, well, don't worry, they're not yet finished wrecking James Bond. Plus, the most important part of the show, your views, your questions. Ask me anything. Give it your best shot, as they say in the queue for booster number 27. That's sure to do the trick. You can reach me via email, gbviews@gbnews.uk, or tweet me at gbnews. But first, the news, as always, with Karen Roberts.
Thank you, Mark. These are your latest headlines. The Prime Minister says he takes personal responsibility for the Conservatives' defeat in the North Shropshire by-election. Boris Johnson's comments come after the party lost a seat that it held for almost 200 years. The Lib Dems candidate, Helen Morgan, won by nearly 6,000 votes. The by-election was triggered by the resignation of Owen Paterson after he breached lobbying rules. He had a 2019 majority of almost 23,000.
Clearly, the vote in North Shropshire is a very disappointing result, and I totally understand people's frustrations. I hear what the voters are saying in North Shropshire, and in all humility, I've got to accept that verdict.
Police have confirmed the 4 young boys who died in a house fire in South London were home alone. In a Facebook post, the 2 sets of twins aged 3 and 4 were named by their grandfather as Leighton, Logan, Kyson and Bryson. A 27-year-old woman has been arrested on suspicion of child neglect.
At 7 p.m. last night, we were called to reports of a fire in a residential property. Officers responded to the incident alongside colleagues from the London Fire Brigade and London Ambulance Service. As has been confirmed, 4 boys who were inside, 2 aged 3 and 2 aged 4, were brought out but sadly died. They were all related. There was nobody else inside the property at the time of the fire.
The father of murdered toddler Star Hobson says he's devastated by his daughter's death. Jordan Hobson says he'll never recover from the callous and cruel way in which she was taken from him. The toddler was physically and mentally abused for months before suffering fatal injuries in her home in West Yorkshire. Savannah Brockhill, who is the former partner of Star's mother, was jailed for life with a minimum term of 25 years for her murder. 2 teenagers have been convicted of the manslaughter of 18-year-old Hussein Chowdhury in Walthamstow. Video released by the Met Police shows Hussein and his family grappling with one of the attackers. He had come to their home under the ruse of buying a designer jacket Hussein had for sale. During the struggle, Hussein suffered a fatal stab injury to his neck. Marvin Ward and Alexis Morris, both 18 and from Ilford, will be sentenced next year. The Prime Minister will hold a COBRA meeting over the weekend with the devolved administrations to discuss the response to the Omicron variant. It comes as daily COVID cases in the UK hit a record high for the 3rd day in a row. More than 93,000 cases were reported in the past 24 hours, almost 5,000 more than yesterday. It's the highest daily total since the pandemic began. Well, that's your news update. Let's now get back to Mark.
Hey, let's get to a brand new feature, This Day in Somewhat Strained Historical Analogy. I see that 300 years ago, 17th December 1721, the Earl of Scarborough died. If you have difficulty keeping your Earls of Scarborough straight, this would be the first Earl, Richard Lumley. Here he is. Let's take a look. What fabulous hair. I love big hair. He should have been in Dynasty in the 80s, or maybe Dallas. Viscount Lumley, as he then was, is best known for being one of the 7 fellows who wrote to William of Orange, urging him to invade England immediately and topple its worthless ruler. If you're a North Shropshire Tory, you may be feeling a little bit like that yourself. But where do you send that letter? Who's going to play William of Orange in this scenario? One should never read too much into the citizenry's rebukes of the governing party in between general elections. For my own part, I'm always wary of Lib Dem by-election victories. That's just parking your vote with a party that exists for few other purposes. If you really want to shove it up a useless government, I prefer the Nigel Farage model of 2019. Form a new single-issue Brexit party a couple of weeks before the 2019 European elections and drive the Tories to their worst results since, basically their worst results since the first Earl of Scarborough was kicking around. Nigel ended Theresa May's premiership and delivered the party to Boris Johnson, who appropriated the single issue and ran his campaign on Get Brexit Done, because until we get Brexit done, we can't do anything else. 3 years on, it's a bit like that with COVID, don't you find? Get COVID done, because until we get COVID done, we can't do anything else. You might think it is, in fact, done, save for the world going to Beijing and demanding reparations. But for some reason, Boris is holding a cobra. Ooh, cobra. He's holding a cobra, so it must be important and scary. He's holding a cobra on Omicron. Let's strain the historical analogy a bit further. Lord Lumley and his pals believed that James II's son was supposititious. That's to say, a fraudulent heir introduced into the nursery to save the house. Supposititious. I believe it's the same source as suppository. And you know where that's inserted. And I'm not saying Boris Johnson is a supposititious Tory, fraudulently introduced into the Conservative Party. Well, I don't know. Actually, maybe I am. Last night, North Shropshire Conservatives either sat home or voted Lib Dem because they'd noticed that Johnson's supposititious Conservative ministry isn't in the least bit Conservative. If you read him in The Spectator and The Telegraph for all those years, you may recall a zillion columns gung-ho for liberty and small government. He once wrote a piece about the Saskatoon berry from the Canadian prairies, which was briefly the subject of some control-freak Blairite UK ban. Quote from Boris: according to some bump I have from the Canadian High Commission, it is standard practice at all Canadian state banquets to sprinkle every course with Saskatoons. When one contemplates the volcanic energy of this century's great Canadians, from Mark Steyn to Conrad Black to Margaret Trudeau, one can only ascribe it to the Saskatoon-based national diet. Unquote. Hey, funny stuff. Back then, the Johnson column was a must-read, not for anything he said, but for the way he said it. Ah, the good old days. Still, one has to admire a chap whose attention to the heavy hand of state regulation extends even to the delightful Saskatoon berry. It's not quite so funny, though, when he gets into government and squeezes the populace to a degree no Saskatoon berry could begin to imagine. It's almost as if all those stirring paeans to liberty and small government at the Telegraph Group were the path of least resistance for an Etonian chancer on his way up through the Conrad Black Empire. Whereas now, ensconced at the heart of the bureaucratic state, with occasional side trips to schmooze Joe and Ankara at the G7, being hot for wind turbines and Omicron lockdowns is the path of least resistance. In his old haunt, The Spectator, they published this graph today to make a very basic point, that when a leader, Tory or Labour, the pattern's impeccably non-partisan, when a leader is in a tailspin, it's hard to pull out. Let's take a look at this here. Where do we go? Yeah, that's at the beginning of the graph. That's Mr. Blair, the rock star. And look at how the rock star Blair, he managed to rally. He didn't get back to where he was, but he managed to partially rally. And then we have Gordon Brown. He just went down. Then we have David Cameron. He just went down and out. Then we have Theresa May, got taken out by Nigel's Brexit party in the Euro elections. And then we have Boris on the same grim trajectory. The issues are out there for any politician who wants to take them. Stopping the migrants, who are uniquely exempt from lockdown, for example, is popular with both the North Shropshire Tories and the Red Wall types. Whereas the Johnson ministry's COVID record, COVID until the end of time, impresses only chumps. He's presided over one of the highest rates of death per capita in the Western world, worse than Spain, France, Germany, the Netherlands, worse than Sweden. Sweden's COVID deaths per million number is 1,498, while the United Kingdom's is 2,161. And Sweden never locked down at all, so its pubs and restaurants and theatres and tourism industries have not been wrecked, and it does not have the attendant mental health crises. Government Boris, in a way the old columnar Boris would have despised, mortgaged his regime to public health commissars who, when the final tally is known, are likely to have killed far more people through cancer and heart disease and strokes by turning the National Health Service into the National COVID Service and telling everyone else to take a number and we'll see you in 2023. Now, there are still a lot of Tories who love Boris Johnson and won't hear a word against him. If so, if you're one of them, what does he have to do to make himself the exception to all those tailspin PMs like Blair and Cameron? Let me know via email, gbviews@gbnews.uk, or tweet me at GBNews. Here now is GB News political correspondent Tom Harwood. Tom, what do you reckon the voters of North Shropshire are trying to tell Mr. Johnson?
They're trying to do one very simple thing, and that's to give Mr. Johnson and his government a thorough kicking after what has been a torrid 2 months for Number 10. Let's not forget that this by-election was never meant to happen in the first place. Had Owen Paterson taken his 30-day suspension from the Commons and shut up about it, it wouldn't have been the enormous front-page story of every paper that it became. There wouldn't have been the by-election. Indeed, the reason we had this by-election in the first place is because of Number 10's cack-handed handling of that entire situation, trying to retrospectively change rules and absolve a friend of wrongdoing. Now, that led to another U-turn, and how many U-turns have we seen from this government now? My gosh. But that led to another U-turn, Owen Paterson's resignation, and then this by-election. But things did not get better. Boris Johnson promised the 1922 committee, that backbench group of Tories, the Tory trade union really in the House of Commons, he promised them that he would get the car out of the ditch. He said that faced with a clear road, he drove the car into the ditch and he would get it out. Well, what happened after that? Story after story of Number 10 parties during lockdown. And that simply sent an already worsening Tory poll situation further south still. Amidst the background of an Omicron case surge, the Tories are now 9 points behind the Labour Party, behind Keir Starmer's Labour Party. It's a really quite extraordinary situation when basically a blancmange can be almost 10 points ahead of Boris Johnson. That is really where we've ended up as a country, through serial error after error from a Number 10 that simply doesn't look like it has a grip on anything going on at the moment at all.
Thank you for that, Tom, but don't knock blancmange right now. I'm not sure. I wouldn't rather have the political scene led by a blancmange. Depends what flavour, though. John Redwood knows all about this. Certainly knows all about waning prime ministerial power, because in 1995 he quit the cabinet and ran for the leadership against John Major. Sir John was supposed to be on the BBC this morning, but after hearing what he was going to say, they changed their mind and cancelled the live interview and insisted on a pre-tape. Instead, we're not like that here at GB. In fact, I have no idea what Sir John Redwood is going to say right now, so feel free, have at it. And what was it that got the BBC all wound up this morning?
Well, I have no idea. They invited me on for an early interview, which I was happy to do because I was up and about doing things, and agreed it. And then they said, would I just sketch what my views were on various questions they wanted to ask? And shortly after that, they said they weren't going to be doing the live interview, but maybe I could do a pre-record. So I then tweeted this, and then they did do a pre-record. But I'm not sure what it was, but it's not the first time that's happened to me with the BBC. Quite often I've been invited on, and then they've wanted to know what I'm going to say, and then sometimes you're not allowed to say it.
Well, let me ask you this then, because I don't know whether you've gotten to that on the BBC, but you are a hardcore Brexiteer, and you did in your Christmas message with your Christmas elf, who was hardcore for Brexit, and then the poor little miserable Christmas elf is all depressed because he doesn't feel it's the real Brexit that he's got. He feels it's some, I don't know what it is, some kind of Chinese knockoff version of Brexit cobbled up behind the Wuhan Institute of Virology. But it's not the pure, pristine Brexit that he was dreaming of. So let me throw what must be to you, I think, one of the most disturbing aspects of the present downturn for the Tories is that polls seem to show now that even people who voted for Brexit are incredibly unhappy with the Brexit deal they got. And it's not obviously the Remainers and the Remoaners and the Rejoiners are all unhappy with it, but Brexit's core supporters don't seem to be too happy with it.
Well, of course we're not, because we haven't had any of the benefits of Brexit yet. We voted to take back control, and we've sort of done that, although we haven't taken control of our fishing grounds, which we think ought to be sorted out, and we haven't got control of our laws and trade in Northern Ireland, which needs to be sorted out. Lord Frost is on that. But we wanted then the government to grasp the opportunities, to change the laws, to improve them, or get rid of the ones that don't make any sense. We wanted them to cut the taxes that the EU had imposed. We wanted them to develop the freedoms, and we're still waiting. And that was the point of my Christmas Elf message on johnredwood.com, for those who are interested, to go around various departments and point out all the huge opportunities we now have as an independent country, which ministers simply haven't grasped. And I'm asking them to wake up and get on with it.
It can be hard getting Boris to wake up. When you ran against John Major, God bless you for that, the Sun headlined it, Redwood versus Deadwood. Has Boris Johnson been reduced to Deadwood?
No, not at all. I think the Prime Minister is the most enthusiastic about the Brexit freedoms of the government. I'm encouraging him and wanting him to get on with it. I think it's various departments. I don't think the civil service on the whole likes it. So they're always saying to ministers, you can't do this, and there are still laws that prevent you, or that we need to keep in line with European schemes, or they repackage the European policies and schemes as British ones, but they're still the same ones. And we need a breed of tough minister and enthusiastic minister who says to their officials, that's all very interesting, but we want to do something different. We really can do better. We didn't need all those laws. We don't need all those European taxes. And why, for example, has this government, which wishes to be the greenest ever, not taken VAT off insulation and green products and heating controls and all those other things? Surely they want to promote these green products. So take the VAT off. It's only on there because the EU imposed it. Very simple win.
Isn't there a problem here, though? Because already, essentially, we have a divided kingdom now, in which, as you mentioned, Northern Ireland is a little bit, well, it's barely Brexit at all. It's not even a little bit pregnant, and the more you distinguish UK law from European law, under the present arrangement, then Northern Ireland becomes more of a foreign country. I mean, wasn't that actually a rather clever trick that the EU used to completely screw the meaning of Brexit?
Well, of course, it was one that I and a few others argued against, and I didn't vote for the final deal because I didn't like the position on either fish or Northern Ireland. But we are where we are. The good news is that the Northern Ireland Protocol is a pretty ambiguous, tortuous piece of prose, where there are quite enough things in it for us, I think, quite legitimately to say that all the trade between GB and NI that doesn't go on to the European Union and the Republic of Ireland is our business, and we should keep it as smooth and as simple as it was before. And I deeply resent the way the EU is trying to wreck GB to Northern Ireland trade by putting all sorts of obstacles and delays in, wanting to add more. And I think you can make a perfectly good legal case to say that isn't within the spirit or even the letter of the Northern Ireland Protocol. So I'm urging the government just to get on and free the GB to Northern Ireland trade, because it's part of the same country and there shouldn't be external type barriers involved.
No, but it also reduces us, I think, in some pitiful and degraded way, to having to being some sort of protectorate of the EU. We're not a member anymore, but the Northern Ireland Protocol, as these guys are interpreting it, doesn't liberate us to go out into the world and go back to being global Britain. It maintains us in this kind of 1 foot in, 1 foot out relationship.
Yeah, quite wrongly, and I think not under the letter of the Northern Ireland Protocol itself, because the legitimate thing the EU wanted to defend, which I understand, is that they want to protect their single market, which is a very regulated market with a set of standards they've agreed. So I think we can say, yes, we'll make sure we're not routing things into your market against your will or things that don't meet your standards. But there is no way that you should be blocking a British supermarket sending something across to Northern Ireland, to one of its stores there for sale in Northern Ireland, because it doesn't meet EU law. It's nothing to do with them. If it meets good British safety standards and is agreeable to the British system, it should pass as freely from the mainland of Great Britain to Northern Ireland as it can do from Liverpool to London.
Well, that's the way it should be, but I worry here that that the EU is determined basically to use the backstop as a way of ensuring that the UK's exit from the EU is a failure, which is one thing they're determined to prove. But I thank you for this. You've been right about this for an awful long time, and I thank you for running against John Major in 1995. And if you ever want to come back in the water and try it again, you're always welcome.
No, but
if there's to be another leadership
running
challenge.
Against John Major did help save the pound, because he wouldn't rule out destroying the pound and going into the euro. My challenge got him to promise a referendum. Tony Blair then promised a referendum.
Absolutely.
And the rest is history. The fact that we got a referendum meant that neither political party dared steal the pound from us, because they knew the public was far more sensible than the politicians. We then had to do something similar to get
Absolutely.
together. Now again,
absolutely.
These politicians
And that's
the EU version of the Northern Ireland Protocol, that we have our own view of the Northern Ireland Protocol, and it's about time we legislated in Britain under our independent controls to establish a proper free market between Northern Ireland and GB again.
Amen to that. And you make an important point there. In that it's not just about the personalities, it's do you affect real change, as John Redwood was saying, keeping the pound, and as Nigel did with what he did in the European elections. You can let me know what you think. Do you agree with Sir John or not? Do you think Boris is damaged? gbviews@gbnews.uk is the email address. We love hostile, vicious emails, preferably full of ad hominem attacks. Still to come, Trump's Director of National Intelligence, Rick Grenell, and straight ahead, one of the most acerbic commentators in these grim times, Brendan O'Neill. All coming up. Don't touch that dial.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello again. This weekend we've got high pressure in charge of our weather, which brings dry and rather cloudy weather with the risk of some dense fog. And it will feel quite chilly as well. There's not much wind around over the weekend, and that means that fog will be persistent and temperatures will struggle to rise where we do see the persisting cloud and indeed fog. Now, as we take a look through the next few days, you can see certainly through tonight we've got a lot of fog across some eastern areas of the UK. So fog warning is in force from the Met Office, and that remains in force until midday on Saturday. Elsewhere, lots of cloud overnight. Where we do see some clearer skies, though, for eastern Scotland and northeast England, we could see some frost as we start tomorrow morning. Quite windy, though, across the far southwest. And those winds will be quite gusty for a time across Cornwall. Elsewhere, though, with the light winds, it means that fog will be stubborn to clear. So for some places, it may not clear through the day on Saturday, staying gloomy and grey. To the west of the UK, some brighter spells are possible. I think the best of any sunshine will be across Scotland. Temperatures struggling, though, for many staying in single figures, maybe just getting to 10 degrees in the far southwest. That's 50 Fahrenheit, but with a breeze, it will feel cooler. And then the fog becomes more widespread again on Saturday night. We could see some fog getting into parts of Wales, southwest England as well. So for some places, grey and gloomy remains the picture for the next couple of days. Some clearer skies, again, leads to a frost across parts of Scotland, maybe northern England, perhaps parts of Wales as well, although cloud amounts will come and go through the night. Then as we go into Sunday, that fog could again persist across some parts of the country, especially through the Midlands and northern England. That's where we could see it lasting all day. Where it does, temperatures will stay close to freezing, but away from that, it'll be just that little bit colder. As we go into next week, stays grey for many, a few sunny spells and cold. Bye-bye.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Join us for the Political Correction. We're here every Sunday to correct politics and put you, the people, back in charge.
We talk about all areas of the United Kingdom, including Northern Ireland.
Our debate goes way beyond the Westminster Village. It's about the real country. It's about your opinion. So please, we want you to tell us what you think.
This is the Political Correction.
Every Sunday morning from 10 a.m. here on GB News.
You're watching GB News live across the UK, the world, and our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We're here for you. Don't forget to join our community by hitting the subscribe button.
And download the GB News app so you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you. Email us at gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
Couple of reactions from you to our top stories. Kelvin says, Boris needs to sort out our borders, stop attacking the aged with their pensions and social care backtrack. Lisa says, I think you're all barking up the wrong tree with the reasons that the Tories lost this by-election in Shropshire. I've friends there who voted Lib Dem for the first time ever, and they care very little about all these secret Christmas parties. No argument from me there, Lisa. It's, as I said at the top, it's the lack of conservatism. Eventually, Conservative voters start to notice, like this party, have been in office for over a decade, and every year there's less and less conservatism. Speaking of which, David says, Redwood for PM. We need a proper Brexiter who is serious. That's a good idea, David. Everybody thinks of John Redwood as being a semi-retired backbencher, but in fact he's young enough to be Joe Biden's love child. There's absolutely no reason why he shouldn't jump in and run for the leadership again. One more. Petrolhead says, Mark, if you were Rishi Sunak, would you keep signing the multi-billion-pound checks for more jabs? Have you had this week's jab yet, by the way? I think it was my 17th jab at the end of last month, but I'm really a bit overdue for my next one. At which point, says Petrolhead, do you think a cheque is going to bounce? I don't think they do it by cheques. I think it's a direct debit from Her Majesty's government's bank account, possibly not located within the UK. But if you make actually a serious point there, that this jab, if you had a tetanus jab every 3 months, bad things would start to happen to you. That's not a way to go on vaccines. Barbara Broccoli is the heir to her father's highly lucrative 007 film franchise. It's been running for almost 60 years, and that's just No Time to Die. No, I'm kidding. Relax. It's been running for about 2/3 of the entire history of talking pictures. The franchise is so old that back then they didn't even call them franchises. They just thought they were adapting the novels of a singular creative mind. 6 decades on, No Time to Die was a pompous, self-regarding bore of a picture that for the first time made me scent intimations of mortality in the whole business. Now Ms. Broccoli is hinting that the new Bond might be non-binary. 007 has been Scottish, Australian, English, Welsh, Irish, so why not non-binary? Because I get the impression from the papers these days that there are far more non-binarians than Irish or Welshmen, so you can see it makes sense. The name's Bond, James Bond, pronouns they, them. You really live twice. It's like Thunder Pussy and Octoball. Brendan O'Neill is Spike's chief political writer, and I guess the total abolition of biological sex isn't really political at all, if only because all the parties from the Tories to Sinn Féin seem to be going along with it. But we're delighted to have him with us. Brendan, do you think Barbara Broccoli was just trolling here?
It's hard to tell these days. I mean, it definitely doesn't mean it's going to happen. I think she was just responding to a question. But the idea of a non-binary James Bond is beyond preposterous. I mean, it is so ridiculous. The real problem is that it would be so easy for his enemies to defeat him. All you'd have to do is misgender him and he would disappear into a puddle of self-pity. That's what happens to non-binary people, it seems. I think, but what it does point to is this general confusion that exists now over biological sex itself. You're not supposed to talk about biological sex. You're not supposed to believe in it. If we look at what's happened to J.K. Rowling, anyone who upholds the truth of biological sex will be demonized and harassed and sent rape threats and death threats. So the fact that that confusion is creeping even into the traditionally masculine world of James Bond is not particularly surprising.
I think the actual, what you call the traditionally masculine world of James Bond, or toxically masculine, as other people would say, of James Bond. I think that's actually the intention. They don't care if somebody writes, if Margaret Atwood writes a feminist novel with a non-binary character, whoop-de-doo. But if you get into the heart of male pop culture, whether you're talking about James Bond or all the identity politics versions of the superheroes now, where Cardboard Man turns gay and Franchise Girl becomes a Muslima or whatever. I think it's actually intentional to get at the stuff boys like in some strange way.
Oh yeah, of course. You know, the cult of transgenderism, the ideology of transgenderism is seeping into all areas of life, particularly those aimed at young people. I know James Bond isn't necessarily for youngsters, but it is going through schools. It's all over pop culture. Social media is awash with this nonsense. Every influencer who wants to move on in the world has to declare their pronouns. That is the gateway to polite society these days, to declare your pronouns. So all of that is happening, and it is definitely about getting to a certain audience. It's about demasculinating boys, because masculinity is seen as somehow problematic. And it's about changing the way children think about sex and gender. So there's definitely a campaign to do that. I think the question for me is, can James Bond even exist in a climate like this? You know, masculinity is now tantamount to a criminal offence. Smoking on film is a big no-no. He can just about drive a fast car, but I don't think that will last for much longer either. It seems to me that it's not really possible for a character like James Bond to thrive in a climate as anti-masculine, anti-fun, and anti-heroic as the one we currently live in. So there are crises ahead, I think, for the James Bond franchise.
Yet at the same time, and you're right about that, but at the same time, Barbara Broccoli has no interest in going ahead and creating a new non-binary MI6 agent of her own. In Hollywood, they've got no interest in saying, OK, instead of making Batman trans, why don't we try and come up with a new Batman? Do you get the feeling that our entire pop culture is running on fumes? You've got these 1930s superheroes like Batman. You got the 1950s British secret agent James Bond, and you've got the 1960s Marvel Comics guys like Spider-Man. It's like nobody's had a good idea now in half a century.
Oh, I find contemporary cinema really depressing because on the one hand, you've got these very worthy films coming out from the kind of fashionable directors, which are often just unwatchable. And they're the ones that win all the awards. You have to do a worthy film to win an award these days. And then you have mass cinema, which is no longer particularly interesting or entertaining. I take my nephews to see those superhero films, those Marvel films, and they are incredibly depressing and very, very boring. It's like, even though there is so much noise and special effects, they're incredibly dull. So I'm worried about the state of film. I think it's very out of touch with what people want to watch and what people want to be entertained by. But for someone like James Bond, I think that, if you look at the most recent film, No Time to Die, which you described very well there, I think the director of that film said he wanted Bond to be a wounded animal. And I thought that is really what's happening to cinema, firstly, but also to masculine heroes. They have to be dragged down. They have to be wounded. They have to be turned into these sensitive creatures, and essentially they have to be defeated. I think what's going to happen in the Bond franchise over the next few years is that bit by bit, James Bond will just be chipped away at until he no longer really exists. And I think that's a bit depressing.
Yeah, that is very depressing, and that's very well put too, Brendan. That wounded animal thing. I thought that was miserable, and Ian Fleming would have been cringing with embarrassment looking at what they did to him in that picture. You're one of the best on these kinds of issues, and I thank you for joining us on GB News. Brendan O'Neill on the non-binary Bond. Coming up, Stump the Steyn. Shoot me anything you like. gbviews@gbnews.uk. You can tweet me, as I believe they say. Twerk? I always get them confused. Twerk me at GB News. Rick Grinnell, former US Director of National Intelligence, will be here straight ahead on GB News.
On Mark Dolan tonight, I'll be meeting one of the victims of the post office postmaster scandal, Seema Misra, who was wrongly jailed for stealing and whose life was destroyed. She joins me in the studio at 10. Tonight's big question is who replaces Boris if he goes. We'll look at the runners and the riders with the Sun's Trevor Kavanagh and former Tory MP Jerry Hayes. Reacting to the big stories of the day is my panel, and in my big opinion, Boris Johnson's running out of time and friends. See you at 9.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else, I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Welcome back. Rick Grinnell is standing by, Trump's former Director of National Intelligence. Let's get to your emails and go stump in the Steyn. Here's a question from Mark, not me, but a namesake. You should be doing the show, Mark. Mark says, why do popular leaders like Boris and Trump keep screwing up? And when will we get the right leader for the West? Well, I'll leave Rick Grinnell will answer that bit about whether or not Trump screwed up. The point here is we are free peoples, and it's not meant to be a leadership cult. It's not meant to be North Korea. Boris Johnson is no more or less than the Queen's first minister and first among equals in the cabinet. That's all he is. And of course, in a moronic media culture, everyone thinks, oh, he's our leader. We need a strong leader. No, you don't. You need to create conditions in the broader world where even worthless squishes of no fixed belief actually do what the people want. I mentioned that on the migrants, for example, that has support across the political spectrum, overwhelming on the Tory side. But it doesn't have support among the people that Boris Johnson has dinner with. All the people he hears from, not least his beloved missus, all hot for climate change and all the boutique issues. You need to create the conditions whereby the political class has to respond to the people's issues rather than just stringing along with what the jet set at Davos is talking about. What else do we have here? Oh, Helen says, Mark, what do you want for Christmas? Well, as I was talking to Brendan O'Neill, I was just thinking and he was talking about No Time to Die and Daniel Craig portraying Bond as a wounded animal and doing all that wimpy new man stuff with his bird in that woeful scene, worst scene in the picture. I was thinking what I would like is a new version of No Time to Die with Sean Connery CGI'd into the old role. They can do it. They have the technology. You don't actually need a new Bond. You can make Sean Connery non-binary all by himself or herself or theirself if you want to. But I would just like that rotten, stinking embarrassment to the Bond franchise, turning Bond into a wounded animal, to be remade. And it doesn't even have to be Sean Connery. If whoever controls Sean Connery's estate doesn't want a hologram of Sean in there, I'll take a hologram of Roger Moore. Anybody but that stinker of a film. One Twitter user, I think, says, assuming hopefully that Boris gets the push, scraping a very dry barrel, who do you think would be the best replacement? I'm not going to, as I said, I'm not going to play that game. Because the thing is, a lot of politicians are very cowardly. They're all focus grouped. They're all reading the polls or whatever. And they're hanging out with elites who all tell them that going down the wind farm route is the way to go. What matters is creating the conditions in the broader society, in the broader culture, that actually penetrate the thick ears of politicians and that tell them they can't afford to ignore the masses. Right now, the masses' issues are as basic as they can get. It's basically the right to leave your house, the right to see your family members. All of that has been put into question. By the last couple of years, and so we have a hell of a job. Just among large numbers of the population, Douglas Murray talked about this last week, there's a lot of people who seem to enjoy lockdown. There's a lot of people who seem to enjoy the government telling them what to do. There's a lot of them, people who seem to think that it's quite right if you happen to be strolling in a park and then you're out there for 10 minutes past your park allowance time, that it's okay for the coppers to rough you up and throw you in the back of the van. Or if you're found to having bought your espresso at a branch of Costa too far from your home, that is enough to attract the state's attention. This is all critical because we're not talking about abstract theories of freedom. We're talking about your life. We're talking about in Dublin, for example. I thought I was dreaming this, but Leo Varadkar, who's the deputy Taoiseach over there, Mr. Varadkar was saying that singing and dancing is now going to be banned because of Omicron. Omicron has done what I've wanted to do for years. I will never again be able to walk into any place in Ireland and be threatened by some third-rate river dancers prancing up and down. I will never have to go into an Irish pub and have some moist-eyed pseudo-tenor bellowing when Irish eyes are smiling, because Leo Varadkar has just banned it all. Because now we live in a world where the state can decree that you cease singing. So we have to actually get back to establishing the wider conditions of basic liberty. And this is a grand opportunity. This is a grand opportunity for a politician who actually wants to get going and do that. We have what's the other? So yeah, I don't want to know who scraping the bottom of the barrel. Liz Sunak, Rishi Truss. I mean, in the end, if we're just that is literally rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic, but just leaving the great flabby useless lump in the deck chair as you move it around the room, rearranging it. Michael says, you always look so dapper. Do you have a personal dresser, or is it your own wardrobe? No, actually, this fine. I'm a slob normally. I'm a slob. Usually they wake me up about 2 hours before the show. I'm sleeping off a boozy lunch in the skip outside, and I'm dressed like garbage. But fortunately, I did a deal. I'm like everyone else these days. I'm on the take from China, and I did a deal with Chairman Xi in which, in return for advancing Chinese interests, he agreed to kit me out in a full wardrobe. We're made round the back of the Wuhan Institute of Virology, where everything is made today. China is really the number one issue for us these days. Everything is behind China, including this virus. The most important thing that happened in Parliament today, I can't remember. This week, I can't remember whether it was a House of Lords committee or a House of Commons committee, but my old Telegraph colleague, Matt Ridley, Viscount Ridley, he was there, and also his co-author on a brilliant new book about the causes of COVID. We should maybe try and get Lord Ridley on the show to talk about that. But Matt and his co-author gave evidence in a parliamentary hearing about what we all know, and which we have known, for anyone who wanted to look, we have known for a year and a half now, that this is not a natural coronavirus. The balance of probabilities, and there are hundreds of, if not thousands, of new coronaviruses every year. But this coronavirus was man-made and escaped from a lab. There are at least 3 prominent researchers at the Wuhan Institute of Virology who had to be hospitalized with a mysterious ailment in September 2019. China lied to the world, and the World Health Organization, which is China's poodle, allowed it to get away with lying to the world. And that's the one aspect. It's COVID all the time. I saw some tweet before the show saying, oh, God, I hope Steyn isn't going to be talking about COVID like everybody else is talking about COVID. The one aspect of COVID we do not talk about is ensuring that this never happens again. We have with us one man who was ahead of many people in recognizing the threat of China. Rick Grenell joins us on the telephone now, former Director of National Intelligence in the United States, former ambassador to Germany. I wonder sometimes, Rick, whether we left it a little bit too late to get interested in China. Your boss was the first president in decades to question the Chinese-American relationship. Are we a bit too late geopolitically? Has China won?
Well, it's such a great question, Mark. First of all, thank you for having me on. But I will say this, that I think that there's a sense within Europe that we kind of missed the boat, as you would say. When I was in Germany representing the Americans and the Trump administration, there was a big problem with getting through to the European government, specifically Germany, in understanding the threat that China poses. I would also say we had the same problem with the Germans assessing the threat from Iran. And I think the lesson is that we Americans have to understand that there's a different threat perception from Europe to America, and therefore trying to just have a consensus with Europe is not always good for America. The Europeans, look, they've lost a member, the EU. The borders of Europe have been rewritten when the Russians grabbed Crimea, and little was done. So all this talk in Europe about being so outraged with rewriting of the European borders, well, it's happened a couple of times, and Europe has stood still while it's happened. And so I'm not sure that America is supposed to care more about the rewriting of the borders or the threat that's coming into Europe if they don't. And I think that's what we're finding with China. They think that they can send their car companies, European car companies, German car companies over, and there's no threat to the future technology, say, of e-mobility. But I would argue that they need to wake up and understand that the threat is all around them in Europe, and there's absolutely little being done.
Well, let me put that in a slightly different way then, because I think your point is valid. But the annoying thing about, say, the European Union is that they think in foreign policy they just have to strike attitudes. America, for the last 70 years, has not just had to strike attitudes, it has also had to prosecute that foreign policy. And are you a bit worried that with Joe Biden and the gang, America's turning into just another virtue signaling attitude striker?
Well, certainly that's what the Europeans want the Americans to be. Don't forget that the Obama-Biden team really, I think, with Chancellor Merkel, are responsible for the shrinking of the EU with Brexit. I mean, the British saw what was happening in terms of not vetting immigrants coming in, and they said, we don't want to be a part of it. And so this idea that when Obama, Biden, the Democrats, or, any combination thereof are in charge in America, that we virtue signal, we tend to think in America that doesn't keep us safe. It makes us less safe.
Yeah.
But there's no question that we hear the applause from Europe when the Obama-Biden virtue signaling is happening. The Europeans want an America that just sits by and talks and lets everybody kind of go about their business, including the Europeans.
Well, you made a very good point. After the election that all the Euros had been trying to get Trump out, and they had made their bed, and now they can lie in it. Thank you, Rick, and make me happy. Next time there's a recall election, or not necessarily a recall election, next time do run for governor in California. Thank you very much, Rick Grinnell. Merry Christmas to you. That'll do it for me. Have a spiffy weekend. Stay safe, stay free. I'll see you Monday.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello again. This weekend we've got high pressure in charge of our weather, which brings dry and rather cloudy weather with the risk of some dense fog. And it will feel quite chilly as well. There's not much wind around over the weekend, and that means that fog will be persistent and temperatures will struggle to rise where we do see the persisting cloud and indeed fog. Now, as we take a look through the next few days, you can see certainly through tonight, we've got a lot of fog across some eastern areas of the UK. So fog warning is in force from the Met Office, and that remains in force until midday on Saturday. Elsewhere, lots of cloud overnight. Where we do see some clearer skies, though, for eastern Scotland and northeast England, we could see some frost as we start tomorrow morning. Quite windy, though, across the far southwest. And those winds will be quite gusty for a time across Cornwall. Elsewhere, though, with the light winds, it means that that fog will be stubborn to clear. So for some places, it may not clear through the day on Saturday, staying gloomy and grey. To the west of the UK, some brighter spells are possible. I think the best of any sunshine will be across Scotland. Temperatures struggling, though, for many staying in single figures, maybe just getting to 10 degrees in the far southwest. That's 50 Fahrenheit, but with a breeze, it will feel cooler. And then the fog becomes more widespread again on Saturday night. We could see some fog getting into parts of Wales, southwest England as well. So for some places, grey and gloomy remains the picture for the next couple of days. Some clearer skies, again, leads to a frost across parts of Scotland, maybe northern England, perhaps parts of Wales as well, although cloud amounts will come and go through the night. Then as we go into Sunday, that fog could again persist across some parts of the country, especially through the Midlands and northern England. That's where we could see it lasting all day. Where it does, temperatures will stay close to freezing, but away from that, it'll be just that little bit colder. As we go into next week, stays grey for many, a few sunny spells and cold.